All right. So today's topic is classes and objects. This concept is also called object-oriented programming concept. I'll write it in capital letter. Object-oriented programming concept. It's a new concept in programming. When we say generations of the programming, object-oriented programming concept came it in C++. There onwards it proceeded in other advanced languages also. So we say it as generation 2 language. So as of now, whatever we are learning from the day one, that was called generation 1 language. I hope I have unmuted myself. Yeah. So C language was the last first generation language. You can say structured language or procedural oriented language. So generation 1 procedural oriented language. Generation 2 object oriented language. Generation 3 advanced object oriented language. Object oriented programming language. So we say OOP, okay, OOPS language. OOPS programming we say it as. So what is class, what is object, we will see. So let's have a quick look at this history. So initially your C or before, okay, C or before, like Fortran, COBOL, Basic, Pascal, PL1, so many languages were there, but last programming language was C in first generation. So currently whatever we were learning as of now from the day one, we can say those are all possible in C language also. That means when one advanced language comes, it doesn't mean that it throws out the old concept. Yes, it will be there, but few more additional concepts also will be there. So when C++ came, then they adopted previous things also, procedural oriented language concepts also, basic concepts we say it as, plus some new concept called object oriented programming concept. So today we'll see, but we'll see it in C# syntax, but concept is similar. Object oriented programming, that is for a security purpose. Detailed part we will see, but first let's have a quick look at the generation. So C++ onwards we can say. Then one more generation came, okay. In C++ level they have three major features. One is encapsulation, one is inheritance, one is polymorphism. Those things available in C# also. We will see today how those are all slowly implemented. But in addition to these three, they added one more in C#. So I will say Java or later, or Java onwards. Java, C#, Python, whatever advanced language you take, those are all advanced object oriented programming. So what extra they took here in advanced object oriented programming is, these three is definitely there, plus additional one thing called abstraction. So that means four major features. There are a lot of minor features also available, but okay, if we'll say about major features, these are the four major features in C# or Java, Python, etc. So that means if you are learning C#, that means here basic programming concept also comes, object oriented programming also comes, plus advanced means abstraction also comes. So that means C# is combination of, we can say, all previous things as well as the new things. So this encapsulation is the very first feature of object-oriented programming concept. And first we have to understand something called classes and objects. Then we have to go to feature by feature, how this classes and object feature is implemented in inheritance, encapsulation, polymorphism and abstraction and so on. So seems to be very techy, but okay, we will go slowly step by step to understand what is all this stuff. So as of now, many programs we made in basic area, but there are something called class, okay, class, program, inside that some function. So that time I was telling you, I will tell detailed part of this class, namespace, what is this static word all about, what is this void word all about. All those things we will discuss later. I was always telling that, right? So this is the right time to discuss about what is that class all about, what are the things really possible inside a class, why it is created, how to create the object of a class to call the function. So all those things little bit in detailed manner we will see today. So this is theoretical part called history of programming languages. Just have some idea, but practical idea you have to have it in C#. No need to learn C++, C and other things. This is just for your understanding. So in C#, so should I write here, note C# is an advanced object-oriented programming language. That means combination of everything, basic level, object-oriented level as well as advanced object-oriented level. So that you say it as basic, intermediate and advanced level of C#. So basic part we did, which is having same facility like our C language or COBOL language, Fortran language, any language that was in generation number 1. So now here onwards, today onwards, couple of classes we will see second generation concept, encapsulation, inheritance, polymorphism and so on. Then after all three features is over, then we will see something called advanced level, abstraction, then implementation of all those features in real-time manner. Various topics are there, so that we will see as advanced level of C#. So what do you mean by this class and what do you mean by the object? Then only we will say it object oriented, right? To say it object oriented, obviously we have to understand what is object, how this programming language concept is completely orienting upon this object. So first let's understand what is a class. When we say class, technical definition is, it is a group of data and member functions. But what is practical understanding, we have to also see. So group of data, and generally we say function, but when we consider inside a class, we say it as member function. Okay, generally function. So what is this function and what is this data all about, which is combined together inside something called class? So syntax is something like this. You have to type class, C-L-A-S-S, class. Then you have to give a name of the class. Suppose my class name is my class, or I will take something meaningful, suppose product. Okay, you are manufacturing some product, so you named it as product. Curly bracket starts, curly bracket ends. Okay, syntax when you say, you will say it as class name, just like this. But example when you say, you will say it as some particular name. So both will understand at the same time, syntax and example. So example is CLSS class, and here class name is suppose product. Inside this class we will have data and we will have member functions. like as of now, if you pick any program what we have already done previously, you can compare it with the understanding what we are getting. Suppose I open that last class program and I want to tell you here which is called data and which is called member function here. It's not that we are not using class, we are using, only we have to systematically understand what is the responsibility of a class. So you can see here how many functions you see here, guys. You see here 2-3 functions including main, isn't it? Main is also a function, array2d also a function. So these are all called functions, and technically we say it as member of program class. That's why we say it as member function. Let me close this. So member function, why? Because these are all member of this class. Inside this boundary of the class we are writing some functions, so we say it as member function. array2d underscore 1, array2d underscore 2. So these are all called member functions of program class. Even main is also a member function of program class. What is data then? Two things we understood here, data and member function. If you take any function, you just expand any function. Array is also a data only because it is storing something in the random access memory. If you open main, here you don't have any data because you are just calling the function. If I declare data here, integer x, that is also data. I stored 100 in x. So data member means x is a data member, 100 is a data, but this is called a local data member if you want to go for inside function, because this is only accessible inside this function. This curly bracket open, line number 8, curly bracket close, line number 16. So inside this line number 8 to line number 16 only you can use this x. But if I put this x somewhere here in the class level, then I can generally understand that if you have 10 function also, all 10 function can use this. Static and all, we will come to that, that is different story, but general understanding is one variable is having in the class level, that means all the functions should use it. If it is inside a function level, only that function can use it. That is what the general understanding. If I am putting inside array2d underscore 1, that means line number 22 to line number 46, anywhere I am using, it's good. But I am trying to use this x somewhere here inside this second function, just like console.writeLine x, it will say what is x. Have a look, console.writeLine x I did here. It will say what is this x all about, I don't know. Can I say x is not existing in the current context, it is saying. You will say I declared it. Why it is saying not existing? Because its boundary is over in line number 46. But same thing, if I will write console.writeLine inside this function, then I will say no problem, because this line is also inside that boundary and this x is also assigned the value inside that boundary. Which boundary I am talking about? Function boundary, line number 22 to line number 47. This is called local data, all in other words local variable. But when we say at the class level, then we set as global variable or class variable. So let me take it. Actually we don't need this x here, for your understanding I copied there. So member function and data. Data is of two types again here. One is in the class level you can declare. Just for your understanding here I am writing it. Note, if we declare a variable in function or inside function, then it's called local variable. Same thing, if variable declared in class level, then it's a global variable for all functions of that class. That class, not other classes, but that class. So local and global. So right side what I'm writing, it is something like note for you, but left side what I'm writing, that is actual syntax of typing a class. So what I will take is, I will take one data member of the class in the example. So I will say integer product quantity, something like p quantity I wrote, or you can write prod quantity or something. So I said integer prod quantity means product quantity. I can give quantity equal to 100 also, no problem. So this is a class variable. This is a class variable. But if I will declare inside the function just like this, I have suppose a function called void, function name is display prod quantity. Public, private, so many things are there, we will understand it. Just understand the skeletal structure of the class and functions. So here if I come and say integer, I will say product price. Suppose here I say integer p price or prod price equal to 5000. Each product is 5000, total 100 products are there. So I will say product quantity is now 100, which is global for all the functions. However, product price is only for one function called display product price. So here I will write console.writeLine something like prod price. So this is called class variable. This is called local variable. Okay, so some technical terminologies we have to understand at the beginning of the object-oriented programming. Class variable, local variable. Both are variable only, but where we declare, based on that, we name it as local variable or class variable. Class variable is also called global variable for that class, not for other class. Imagine I have another class here, let's say class say accounting, then accounting related things I will keep it here, product related things I will keep it here. So based on the facilities what you want to provide through programming, your entire program will be divided into various groups, and that group is nothing but data and functions. I can have one function also, I can have multiple function also. Similarly, I can have multiple variable also inside a class. So now justify the definition. Group of data and member functions is a class. Group of class is a namespace. That means suppose I have a class called accounting, I have a class called product, but after all both are belongs to single company, ABC Limited, then I will name this namespace as ABC Limited. It's okay. I started curly bracket here and extremely end, I will end the curly bracket. So namespace is a logical work area that contains one or more classes. Class is a group of data and member functions. So logical work area. Logical why? Because it doesn't take any extra memory. If your both class are taking, imagine here 20 byte, here 10 byte, total 30 byte, then your namespace will also take 30 byte. It doesn't take any extra memory from its own. It's a logical boundary, you can say. So Just like a boundary for 2-3 buildings, you can say boundary for 2-3 classes or multiple classes. When your programming is getting compiled by your compiler, then generally whatever the name of the project you give, by default it will name the namespace, and during compilation it will prepare the DLL or exe which is called assembly with that name. How? It will say ABC limited dot exe or ABC limited dot DLL. That means any small program you are writing, the moment you compile, it will go to its executable assembly or reusable assembly, and based on the namespace name it will create that assembly file. This is called post compiled file or assembly file. There are two types of assembly, one is executable assembly, one is reusable assembly, but anyway that is not today's topic. So little general knowledge, how does it decide based on what name my program will be compiled and kept in a file? So that is the default namespace, nothing but your project name. When you say file new project, that time itself you are giving some name, right? So that name will be your default namespace name. But if somebody wants to change it, it's okay. You are most welcome. You can change it. But by default, the namespace name will be project name. Now suppose you want to create one more namespace, then go ahead, wherever your namespace ABC Limited is closing, there you go and write another namespace, just like this. I will say namespace XYZ Limited. Absolutely fine. Suppose some programming for first company, some programming for second company. So second company name is XYZ Limited. You can give another namespace with this. But today we are not going to work with multiple namespaces. We have another topic called class library. There we will be seeing multiple namespaces. So today's focus is one namespace but multiple classes. So what we understood now, let's implement in a program, then we will see further how to call this function and how to execute this function. So coming to Visual Studio and creating a new project. This is our, I think, our array project. I closed it, and we will create a fresh project for classes and objects. Each and every terminology at the beginning you have to understand, not necessary to jump to advanced concept, basic classes and objects concept of the object oriented programming. Then we will go to the concept of encapsulation, polymorphism, and so on and so forth. So first thing is various terminologies we have to be aware about. So go to console application, go to .NET Core, and then say next. I will name it as OOPS concept, means object oriented programming concept. I will start with OOPS. This S stands for system, object oriented programming system, underscore whatever the name. I will say classes and objects. So today's focus is about how to develop a class, how to keep some data, how to keep some functions, and how to create the object of the class and call the functions. So go for desktop and create it. So what will be the default namespace, guys? Obviously this one, project name, whatever I gave, oops underscore classes and objects. So project name is nothing but the default namespace name. You can see line number 3. Space should not be given. Either don't give space or give some underscore like this, but space is not allowed. Automatically it created one class at least. Okay, class called program, where main function will be kept. That means if you have not yet made any building inside and you are creating a boundary first, then you have to keep one open gate for boundary, right? You cannot keep a boundary with completely closed gate. Suppose this is a boundary first you are preparing. Inside that boundary you are planning some 2-3 buildings. Okay. Imagine that this building will be developed later. First you are preparing a boundary. So what you do? Some open gate you are keeping there, right? So this open gate you can say like a main function is your open gate to this boundary called namespace. So your compiler will come always through main. So just for your understanding, I will develop this. So this is your main function, you can say. Okay, this is a gate which is your main function, you can say. Other functions you have to develop, but this is called a main function which is automatically coming the moment you create the project. Okay, compiler always enters into the program through main. After that, it depends which function you are calling in the main and so on. So first I will do that which you already know. You know this already. Static void f1. Inside f1 you have some line called console.writeLine. Something like this is first function. Some coding you have inside f1. Now imagine I forgot to call that function. Okay, I forgot to call that function. Do you think it will display me anything? Even though my function is having this is first function sentence, but I forgot this f1 to call here. That means compiler will come to main gate, then it will see inside and it will never find any coding inside. Nobody called f1. Okay, this one I forgot, so it will not jump to f1. Line number 8, line number 9, line number 10, line number 11, over. It will go back. Have a look. If you have a console.read key, you can easily understand that. So console.read key, that means it will hold the cursor, but this sentence will never come in your output. Just run it. So if you are having multiple functions inside a class, doesn't matter, but don't forget to call them in the main function. So can you see output is nothing, just my cursor is blinking because I have a console.read key. But if I call that function here, then only my compiler will jump to that function, then execute this line, again back to the line number 9, then console.read key. That means hold the cursor to see the output. So now run it and see how it is happening. It displayed and then waiting for me to press any key to continue. So overall idea is you might be having n number of functions, but all the functions, unless you call it in main, it will not happen automatically. But currently this function is having some word called static. If I'll remove the static, what will happen? Let's understand. Then we'll go to how to declare various variable, various functions, and then call them using something called object. If I delete this static word, technically what happens? Let's understand. Error it is showing, line number 9. But why that error? Let's understand, and how to resolve this kind of problem we have to understand. Still, anybody there who can answer this question? Why this red color underline? Line number 9. Don't say that, sir, you deleted static, that's why. That's true, but why so? If I will have static, suddenly it is saying no problem. If I will remove that static, suddenly it is saying problem is there. I cannot call this f1. Anybody? Function f1 is not local to main function. What do you mean? A variable can be local. A variable can be inside the function. Function cannot be inside the function, right? So there is nothing called local function, global function. Function is a member of class. So you will say inside the class or outside the class. But you will not say this function I will suddenly take and copy paste inside this function. That is not making any sense, right? I have two functions, one is main, one is f1. I want to call second function inside first function, as simple as that. So why it is saying f1 not permissible here? No, wrong. Anybody else? Static is doing the, playing the role, but my question is why? Anybody knows? I will explain, but still I want to know. Yeah, Shweta. No, that is wrong. Static constant not equal. Anybody else? Okay, let me tell you. Let's go to that Excel sheet to understand memory management. What happens when static? What happens when remove static? Suppose this is your random access memory. Okay. This is your random access memory. Object oriented programming, very important, guys, in entire career, I will say. Not only .NET, anything you are learning, everywhere nowadays object oriented programming concept is there. So little bit you have to be focused to understand each and every concept, then it will be very easy for you. Systematically will go, but that systematism you have to follow also. What happens if I am declaring a variable called integer x, or I am defining a function called void f1 open bracket close bracket, then some coding. Okay, these are all called object oriented. Means inside random access memory, when you declare a class called program, if you don't have any other additional class also, we have a class called program, isn't it? So inside program class, I define static. That means the name is inside the class. That means suppose my class is, I will give a different color here. Suppose my class, this blue color is my class, suppose program. Okay. This whole yellow color is my random access memory. And inside that some memory it allocated for program class, suppose. Inside this program class, definitely you gave the name x and f1. That means inside the boundary called class, you defined one x variable, one f1 function. This open bracket close bracket is the function symbol. Simply writing means variable symbol. The moment you put a static before this x or before this f1, okay, then what it will do, physically when it will allocate the memory, it will not allocate this x and f1 inside this blue color. Just imagine, before this int x I put a static word. Similarly, before this void f1 I put a static word. Second case, first case is no static, second case static. Now what will happen, you have defined inside the program class, no doubt about it. Both are inside the program class only, like this: static void integer x equal to 100. Okay, please be unmute, guys, lot of sound. Yeah, so this is the data member and this is the function. First time we gave without static, now we are giving with static. What is the difference is, when we are doing without static, everything you have written also inside the class, and it will be kept inside also boundary physically. Memory will be allocated inside that only. But the moment you put static, what it will do, it will take them to the global area. Global area means somewhere here. This is my global area, yellow color area. That means imagine I have two classes. One class is program class, another class is something like product class. Okay, This one is product class, and this one is, I'll give you equivalent color so that you can understand. So program class, and this is your product class. Now the moment I put static to anything, though it is a member of program class, but it will allocate memory somewhere here. Global area. It will not say allocate the memory specifically inside that boundary. Other variable which is not static, that will be allowed here. For example, here I have another variable called simply integer y equal to 200. Okay, very important concept, static. Understand it properly. Not able to understand, you will ask me at the end. So I declare one as static, one as no static word. Then what will happen? This y, it will allocate the memory inside that boundary here. So y equal to 100 or 200, whatever it is, it will keep here. But x, I said 100, which is static, so it will be keeping it here in the random access memory. That means this x value can also be used here, can also be used here. If I have 10 different class also, I can use everywhere this x value. That is called static, means global. So static means global. Global to all the classes across the entire namespace. But the moment you remove that static, it suddenly took that x into this variable. What I did, again I removed this static. Simple integer x I did, just like this. Then suddenly what will happen? This x was allocated outside, but currently what it will do, it will take it and allocate it inside. Now coming to our error part. When I was giving here static, then it was available globally. Available globally means I can use it in main also, I can use it in F1 also, because they are also static. So easily I am able to use this x. I can say console.writeLine x value. It will not show any error. Why so? Because my main function also in global area, my F1 function also in global area, and my variable also in global area, because all three of them are having static, static and static. No problem, no error you see, line number 11 or line number 19. But now what I did, this x, I removed this static word. Suddenly by removing the static word, what it will do, it will take inside a boundary. But these two functions are sitting outside. This x went to boundary. It is just like this. X become in the boundary, F1 and F2 or main and F2 become outside the boundary. Now tell me, somebody going in the public place, like outside your building in the road is a public place. So in that road, somebody is going just like main and F1 you see, and you have your study table inside your study room, this blue color. Can that guy see your study table? No. Because it is inside the boundary, this is outside the boundary. Unless you take this F1 inside this boundary, you cannot communicate with this x, because this is inside the boundary, this is outside the boundary. Now what I need to do with F1 to make use of this x now? I have to remove the static. If I'll remove the static, this line number 19, what error you see, you should not see. Let me check. I remove this boundary, static word. That means suddenly by removing the static word, if you understand it properly, you must tell me that this F1, it was before outside, but suddenly it went inside. Because no more static means no more global. my study table inside my room only, not like public property. So static is just like a public property. Taking your chair and putting inside a public place like bus stop or garden, obviously anybody can come and sit. That means anybody can use it when you use static. But the moment you removed that static, it went inside a boundary called class. So F1 now not allowing here to call. Can you justify why now? Line number 12. Because main is outside the boundary, F1 is inside the boundary. Why don't you think that way? Isn't it? So F1 is non-static, that means object-oriented function. This is called object-oriented function because it is inside the boundary of the class, and this is called global function. Which one? That means public place this main is sitting, and inside a boundary this F1 is sitting. So both cannot communicate each other unless this will be non-static or this will be static. A static function can use only static members without object. Conditions apply. Okay. Then we will go to object. How object can call this function to avoid this error in line number 12. But before going to object, at least now you understood this boundary concept. Static word means global. Remove the static means inside a boundary which class it is available in. That is the first level understanding about object oriented variable, object oriented function versus static. Now we are not happy to define everything static, because making everything static means everything global. Anybody can call any function, any function can use any variable. Then what is a big deal in object oriented secure functionality? Why not we will go to COBOL, BASIC, Fortran, C, Pascal, 30-35 years back, whatever language was there. Why not we will go to that language then? Why C, sir? Why Python? If you are open to use anything at any place without any security. So in the world of security, if you want global one or two items, then make sure you have to put a static word before that, so that instead of keeping inside the boundary or that class boundary, it will allocate that variable or function outside it. That means in global space. What is the significance of putting something static? I mean, why to put static? Because perhaps I want something which has to be used by program class also, product class also. Tomorrow if I will create one more class called accounting class also. Okay, suppose I have another class called accounting. So all the classes wants to use something, then I have to have static. Now come to this program, answer me, why main is always static, guys? Basically just 5 minutes back I said main is just like main gate, isn't it? Compiler always enters through main function to the program. After that it checks which function is called, which function is not called. But main itself, if it will be not global, I said static means global, right? Static means global, simply. Now come to this paintbrush file what I shown you. If you make main itself not static, then what do you think? What will happen? Don't you think this main will also go and sit inside this boundary, and it will happen something like this? That means there is no entry to the boundary and main is sitting inside also. Now compiler is available here. Compiler is trying to go to the main, but main is not a static member, guys. If main is not a static member, that means you are, in one hand, you are saying main is also going and sitting in the boundary. It doesn't have any exposure to outside, no static. So compiler has to come inside the main, then only other things will happen. Na? That's why main should be always static. You cannot remove that main static. It will not show compilation error, but the moment you execute it, it will say, hey, compiler is coming, knocking the door, but nobody is helping to compiler to go inside the program. At least some main gate should be there now. So main always should be static. That is the reason. Not only C#, any programming language where classes, objects, variable, functions, etc. which we everywhere, main should be static. And this static concept not only in C#, it is also applicable in Java, Python, any language you go, advanced language. So nothing specific to only .NET professionals. Static concept means static concept. So static says, please make it fully global. Now, without making further late, we have to end up the class here. Tell me how I will call this function then, and how I will call this X here. One is simply remove the static, the best solution, I mean easy solution I will say, not best solution. But unfortunately, if I will remove that static from main, I have a problem. My compiler is not entering into. So what you have the solution for this? That is one way. But I said making everything static is again security loophole. Don't you think? That means this X can be used by anybody. Tomorrow if I have a class called product, then this product class also can use that static variable, right? But I don't want that. I want to call this function and I don't want to make it static. Suppose. Then what is the solution? Let me tell you. There is something called object. No, nothing will work. Nothing will work if it is static. Okay? If static, it will work, but non-static means nothing is going to work. I will tell you how it will work. There is something called object of the class. That means you are saying, please create one extra memory space called object. Allocate the memory for this program class. And using that, you call this function. So let me call you that through object. So program is my class name. Okay. I created one extra element called obj. Object short form, that's why obj. Otherwise you can say abc, xyz, anything. So equal to, in array we have seen some keyword called new, right? Here also new keyword will use. New means always allocation of the memory. So I will say, forget about that class boundary, forget about that global value. Please allocate one extra memory space for me where all the non-static members you keep it. That means new program. So what will happen? It will come here to random access memory. It will create one extra memory space, something like this. I will color it something green. Okay. So obj it created somewhere here. And it allocated all the non-static members into this green color area. Now tell me, what are all non-static members? Y is a non-static member. F1 is a non-static member. Okay. X is not a non-static, it is a static. Main is also static. So this Y and this F1, it will allocate inside this. Y and F1. Why? Because those two guys are not having static. Now it is saying I allocated a special memory allocation named as obj. In general we say it as object. If you are using that obj, then wherever you want to call this Y and F1, you can call it. Regardless it is static or not a static, you can call it inside program class, you can call it inside product class, you can call it inside accounting class, but conditions apply is you have to have permission to get the accessibility of those object. How to give permission and all, we will see it in next class. But today I will show you how using object obj I can call this y and this f1. Let's go here. Our requirement is f1. So what I will do, I will just put on obj dot before this f1. That means I am saying, no doubt f1 is not a global function, it is a object oriented function. So you need one object to call that function. If somebody created the object and offered it to you, then easy, you can call it. But still we have restriction also. If I don't want to give the object to be created, I have some other way around. But today let's go for the happy things, not the complicated or negative things, only positive things. So program is one class. I created extra allocation of the memory to obj so that it will count from top to bottom what are all functions or variables without static. So that things it will take and store inside one boundary, extra boundary called obj object. So the object is now you can define easily. Object is one extra allocation of memory of non-static member of a class. Object is an extra allocation of memory to non-static members of a class. That means as per that y and f1 qualified, it put inside this. That means it says now no need to worry. If you want to call y and f1, use this object. If you want to call x and main or another thing which is static, you simply call it, because that is global. So object oriented y, because object is required to call those kind of functions. If I will not use this object, it will say I cannot call it. I will not allow to call it. Now 99% of your future programming will have non-static variable and non-static functions. Why so? Because rarely one or two function you will say that global, right? Anybody calls, I don't have issue. Maximum functions you will say no, specific object only should call it. If it is accounting department, then accounting department object only should call those function. If it is security department object only should call that function. So nowadays it is security, what do you say, data security generation, right? That's why you will see 99% of the functions and variables will not have that static word, because static word is, you can say, security loophole. Without any hesitation anybody can call it, that is a security loophole. But if you want to restrict it, only so and so department can call it, only so and so people can call it, only so and so role person should call it. So that kind of restriction you can offer only when you don't have that static word. So object oriented all about focusing those members of data or those members of function which is not having that static word. Otherwise static is there means it is as if you are writing a program in C language or something. So this is all about static versus non-static, and for non-static you need object, and for static you don't need object, you can call directly. So what I will do for your understanding, one function I will make with static. Here I will say static void f2, and inside this f2 I have suppose console.writeLine. This is a static function like that. Then f2. Now if you understood whole concept what I explained, now help me how I will call f2 here. obj.f2 or simply f2? Simply f2. And why it will work simply f2, why not showing error? It's a global. Okay, so main is also sitting outside the boundary, f2 is also sitting outside the boundary, both are able to talk each other. As simple as that. But f1 is sitting inside the boundary, main is sitting outside the boundary. So who is going to help main? Object is going to help main. So since unless you have the object, you cannot call the function. Unless you call the function, you cannot execute the functionality. That's why entire execution of the program is depending upon the object, and that is the concept of object oriented programming. Okay, so this is initial understanding what is a class, what it keeps, and what is one static member and what is one object oriented member. So same concept will continue next class. It's bit bigger concept. So see you guys next class.